Hello and how are you? My name is Winnie Barawa. Welcome to our session on type of policies. If you're new here, this is a channel that covers topics and content regarding healthcare, and in other moments we bring experts who are able to take us through different technical parts that you may not be able to handle. And if you're new here, please remember to subscribe, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you very much. Now, to understand better how our channel works, if you are looking for particular notes, lessons or specific parts, please refer to our playlist. You'll find all the guided topics there and guided lessons that have been compiled for you. So let's go back to types of policy. We've introduced the topic where we are saying we're focusing on health policy, and we've introduced the concepts of health policy, and then we've brought up the characteristics that make up a good policy. If you've not gone through that, you can review onto our links down below and be able to watch more on it. So let's focus on types of policy today with me. So policies can be classified into different parts according to different factors, and one of it is according to the reasons of development. So in this case, you can have type number one, where we have reactive policy. So a reactive policy is a response to a problem or an emergency. So normally we provide reactive policies when you want to design a solution to an existing problem, and the development of this policy is normally very fast or quick because the problem is urgent, we need a solution, and we're not sure what to do. For example, when COVID-19 came in and people were stranded and wondering what to do, most government came with reactive policies. Basically, these were statements or guiding statements that were to provide solutions and way forward on how to handle the emergency disease. But then we have proactive policies. So proactive policies, these are policies that are designed to prevent concerns or problems from occurring. They are quite preventive. They're not a reaction for an emergency. So could be, for instance, already existing policies in our different setups that guide our day-to-day activities, but the agenda is to prevent. So for example, let's say the government has an emergency management plan, and in that emergency management plan, there is policies that will guide the different steps on how to handle emergencies. So these guidelines that provide ways of how to handle these emergencies is what you are calling the proactive policies. These policies are not made when the emergency is already happening. No, they are made way prior before they happen or they tend to happen. And so they give a platform to know, in case of its occurrence, what could be the ways that you can engage on such. And then we have issue-specific policies. Under the issue-specific policies, we are saying we can have policies that are being formulated based on the issue that is being addressed. So it helps mostly in the day-to-day management and decision-making, and these policies are very broad. It could cover financial and economic issues. It could be providing environmental policy. It could be a health policy, education policies, or industrial and manufacturing policies. So when it comes to specific issues, you need to appreciate that these policies are based on the issue at hand. So if you have health issues, then you'll be developing what you're calling health policy. And that is our focus in this class, health policies, and you will see how these policies are formulated and so on. So with that, I think it's a bit clearer on its own, because based on what you're formulating, then you'll be having different policies: financial, health, education, environment, industrials, export policies. All these are different areas that policies can be formulated in for the purpose of its management and decision making. All right, then we got this other part here where we talk about having policies according to scope covered or the developer. So in the aspect of developer, you can either have private or public policies. So a private policy is a policy relating to institutions and organizations that are privately owned. So for instance, you own maybe an organization, you founded an organization, could be a CSO, community-based, faith-based, a company. All these could be privately owned. Now, when you develop policies in these setups, what you're doing is you're forming a private policy, because this policy will not be effective in the public space. what this policy will be, it will only be applicable in that particular organization. In other organizations, that policy is not relatable and it cannot be applied there. But then we have the other policy that we are calling public policy. So a public policy is a policy that has been formulated in relation to government bodies or government agencies. Its main target is to provide guidance for the greater or larger public population or community. So for instance, in our governments, we have different ministries, and in these ministries, they are supposed to provide goods and services to the public or to the larger public population. So in these ministries, you can't operate without guidelines, and these guidelines is what you're calling policies. But whom are these policies scope on? More, they are serving the public. So policies that have been developed for the purpose of serving the public or serving the general public, then we shall call them public policies, mostly relating to government agencies or relating to the ruling office at that particular time. But also we have social policies. So social policies, they pertain to directives that mostly are meant for promoting social welfare of a public. For instance, let's look at the traffic rules. So traffic rules, they are public policies, but their target is the social environment, whereby as you walk in the public and you're using either the different means of transport, there are certain rules that are supposed to guide these transport areas. And these are social areas. So it's a social policy because, yes, there are guidelines either formed by the private or formed by the public, by the guide to keep the social population or the public population safe or promoting their welfare. So there could be many other policies that guide the public, but any policy that is expected to promote social welfare, then we call it the social policy. I hope that makes some sense. Then we have another way of looking at policy where we're saying based on the effects on the individuals. So we can have distributive policy as one of it. And in this distributive policy, it says this policy has an effect of affecting the distribution of goods and services as well as their costs and prices. Let's go to the financial policies and the business policies or economic policies. So in the economies, we have aspects like prices, costs, production policies and all that. So if a policy will affect the production or distribution of goods and services, then these policies are being referred as distributive policies. Then we got regulatory policies whose role is either to limit or to compel certain types of behaviors. So it could be regulation how to handle yourself in confined spaces. We could be having regulation that guides people on how to conduct themselves in public. Basically, regulatory policies are in place to either limit or enhance certain types of behaviors. So they're applicable when maybe you need to regulate certain good or bad behaviors. So you wish maybe, let's look at students in a school. So with students in a school, there are certain behaviors that are supposed to be abhorred or stopped, and there are certain behaviors that are supposed to be compelled and emphasized on. So these policies in schools that help in putting certain behaviors in check in these particular setups, that could be examples of regulatory policies. But we also have constituent policies. So with constituent policies, they create executive powers and they mostly deal with the law. So what a constituency means, it's part of. So being part of means it's part of the bigger portion, but their main role is to be part of the executive power and mostly looking at the laws and the constitution. So when it comes to the constitution, most of the time we refer to it as the rule of the land or the overall supreme power that guides the operations of the country. So with constituent policies, this mostly refers to the overall executive power that provide guidelines in a given country. So yes, constituent policy comes from the word constitution, or rather what guides in full the different parts of a country or the different parts of an organization. Then we have another caliber according to management or according to the level of management. So in management, we have the top level management, middle level management, and the departmental management. So according to these levels, you can have different policies. So at the top management, we have the top management policy. So by explanation, these are laid down policies more so by the top management, and we usually call them basic policy. So because these are the topmost rules and they're laid down by the top managers, most of the time these policies are trickled down via what we call the top-down approach, when you want to have the policies trickled down and implemented. But then we have the mid-management or mid-level management policies. The mid-level management, they are created by the mid-level managers or managers who are in the different parts of the organization, but they are not top level. So they affect a larger part of the organization, but we also call them general policies. They basically provide general ways of handling the organization. Then we got departmental policies. Departmental policies, they run routine activities of the departments. So let's say you are in a certain ministry in the government. So in the ministry, there's the top managers. So these top managers will give you the basic policy. In the mid-level managers, they provide general policies. And at the department, that is the head of the department, they will be helping with certain policies, but to just provide routine activities of the department. They can't become rule of the organization, but they are good for helping with routine activities of the departments. And here we have others or other categories of policies, and one of it could be written and verbal policies. So written and verbal policies, as the word comes out, written policy is a policy that has been put in a document or a statement that can be referred. While oral policy are normally orally communicated, we do not have a document that will prove that this policy in existence, but it's assumed that the members of that particular population know them. And then we have the implied policies. So implied policies are neither written nor verbal, but they actually exist. So this is a state whereby in certain communities, there are certain rules that guide that community, but they're not put in any document. They don't seem to be actually in place, but they're actually in place and they guide you. So these are policies that they're neither written or verbal, but they actually exist. Sometimes you can call them like rules of the land or ways of life. You don't really need to be told how it works, but you just know it works that way. And then we have functional policies. So with the functional policies, they relate to different functions of a given area. And these policies, they provide ways of doing things. So with the functional policy, they're like manuals of how things work, but they kind of allow the day-to-day operations of these particular areas. So that's about others. Verbal, written, implied, functional policies. They don't really belong to certain categories, but they're important parts for you to know. So here is me appreciating you again for staying with me all the way to the end. Don't forget to comment. Tell us your highlight. Which parts did you like the most? Also share with your platforms. Like this video and don't forget to subscribe again if you've not subscribed yet. So bye and see you in the next lesson.